don't worry. I'll give you an overview of what Meraki is about, what cloud managed wireless is about, why is Meraki wireless unique, and why you should choose Meraki. Then we'll go into a dashboard demo. What I'm thinking today is to just take you through how you might set up a wireless network, how you might configure a few pieces of it, and then what you would be able to see once you have a wireless network fully up and deployed, the end-to-end visibility that you get all the way from down to fingerprinting a client to monitoring all the applications in the network. And then I'll show you how you might troubleshoot a network. And then we'll close out with some of the products that we have available and next steps. So let's go into a bit of an intro and talk about Cisco Meraki in general. So our goal is really, with a world of complexity in the IT space, we want to create technology that simply works. And this was our mission and our goal ever since we started back in 2006. A group of MIT researchers came up with a way for deploying, managing, monitoring wireless access points that blanketed their campus at MIT and the surrounding town. And they found that it was really, really a challenge to deploy those access points. They were climbing up on roofs in the wintertime, replacing antennas and things like that. And they certainly witnessed the challenge that I'm sure a lot of you face today with configuring, monitoring, troubleshooting networks. And so what they did is they took the controller for the access points and they hosted that in the cloud. And that allowed them to use a GUI-based point-and-click dashboard that you see at the top of the image there and use that to manage the wireless access points. So that was revolutionary, the first cloud-managed wireless access points. And since we were acquired by Cisco in 2012, we've expanded out an entire stack of networking products. So not just wireless, but you see switching there, security, routing. We've got endpoint management, even security cameras. So all of those different devices are managed by that same GUI-based dashboard. And because we started this model out of cloud-managed IT, we are by far and away the leader when it comes to cloud-managed IT. So a lot of numbers there on the screen. We're number one in all of those, but the point of that is it's not really to show off or just to show numbers, because what does that matter, right? The reason that we talk about the massive scale that we have is because it allows us to really improve our firmware stability. So if you are a large network and you've got tens of thousands of Meraki wireless access points installed, you can't manage lots of downtime. Downtime is costly. We see that networks that are kind of mid-sized networks typically have $200,000 of cost associated with any hour of downtime. And we can certainly imagine that here at the Meraki office in San Francisco, in that if our network goes down for an hour, we've got lots of salespeople that are trying to close deals. We've got this webinar going on. We've got lots of potential revenue that could be lost, and a lot of other businesses are the same way. Even if you're not a business, if you're a school and you lose Wi-Fi for an hour, that has huge costs as far as limiting the learning of students. So the fact that we have all of these millions of nodes around the world, we're able to detect corner cases in the performance of our devices, and we're able to remedy that. We're also able to monitor some of the metadata and how our customers use our products, and then we're able to release features and slight tweaks to our dashboard and our user experience to really optimize all of that. So there's a few questions that often come up with people who aren't so familiar with cloud-managed IT. They're maybe more familiar with an on-prem type of deployment where they've got a controller on site. And some of the questions I'll try to answer here proactively. So the first is that, with the cloud, you obviously get a really intuitive experience. You've got a browser-based dashboard that's doing everything that you would do with a CLI-based on-prem device. But it's highly scalable as well. So there are questions that people ask as far as, how many devices can be supported by the cloud. We have customers that are running tens of thousands of devices. But not only that, there's not really a limit as far as the number of devices. There are also huge scalability advantages to the cloud. So the ability, for example, to add devices to sites just in minutes. You pre-configure them in the dashboard. You've got zero-touch provisioning, and the device is shipped out. Somebody on site plugs it in. It downloads its own configuration and sets itself up. So you can imagine if you've got 3 or 4, maybe even 20, 30, 100 sites that all have a lot of similarities, you can set up one template in advance and then have people install those devices on site, and they will download that template that scales across all those 100 sites at the same time, and they will set themselves up. So a lot of scalability that's built in with cloud management. We've also got 4 nines of uptime as far as reliability and SLAs, and that's pretty standard nowadays. But a lot of people ask, what happens if the Meraki cloud goes down? Does my network continue running? And the answer is it absolutely does. So we are distributed across multiple different countries and regions as far as where our data centers are. We have our own data centers that we manage. But even if all of those data centers were to go down, your network would continue to stay up and running without any issues. The only difference is you wouldn't be able to make configuration changes at that point. So in the worst case scenario, you've got some configuration changes that you wouldn't be able to make via the cloud. There are also security benefits. So one question we get a lot is, does the Meraki cloud pick up the user traffic that's traversing my network? And the answer is no. As you see in the diagram on the right, we are an out-of-band cloud managed solution, so the user traffic passes through your own network. The only thing the Meraki cloud picks up is high-level management data, and it's about a kilobit per second per device that's picked up, and that allows you to manage your network via that GUI-based dashboard. We are fully HIPAA and PCI compliant. We do third-party security audits, daily penetration testing on our cloud architecture. But the big benefit from a security point of view is that we've got automatic firmware and security updates that are happening. They can be user scheduled or they can happen automatically. But for example, from the wireless perspective, many of you may have heard of WPA2, which was compromised somewhere last year, and Meraki was able to patch for that crack vulnerability. If you Google that and look that up, Meraki was able to patch that immediately, so people weren't experiencing any vulnerabilities based on that WPA2 issue. If you want to learn more about the cloud architecture, different white papers and things like that, you can go to the meraki.com/trust down there. And because of this kind of cloud scalability, you can find all sorts of customers that are using Meraki. I won't go through each one here. We've got a whole web page for that, meraki.com/customers. But the key point is that you're able to manage all of these massive networks with just a lean IT team. So for example, Audi at the top, they've got 2,000 dealerships with an IT team of 6. Wild Rose at the bottom there, they've got hundreds of APs, thousands of students that they're managing in the network, and they do it with an IT team of 1. So when you think about scalability, that is real scalability. So let's kind of cover a little bit about why Meraki Wireless is unique. And one of the key pieces that you'll see is we've got all of these different capabilities, whether it's centralized end-to-end visibility control, Facebook and splash pages built into your guest wireless from the dashboard, integrated analytics, we've got Wi-Fi 6, etc. Right? We've got all of these different capabilities, granular control, end-to-end, all the way down to fingerprinting a specific client. But the key piece that makes Meraki Wireless unique is that all of this is integrated in and is a complete solution out of the box. There's no extra hardware, software complexity that you have to deal with. If you look out across the rest of the industry, you see a lot of people are starting to also catch on to this idea of cloud. They're trying to market themselves as cloud, but it really makes sense to scratch beneath the surface a little bit more and try to see, what features actually might require an additional controller, or what features might require a virtual machine. And what you'll find with a lot of other solutions that are so-called cloud is that they'll say, well, actually in this case we'll need to add an additional controller. Oh, with this extra feature we'll need to deploy a virtual machine. Oh, we actually don't. We have some visibility on the surface, but if you scratch below the surface, you can't actually fingerprint a specific client and go down to that depth of detail. So because Meraki was the first from the cloud managed perspective, we've been able to build a really deep and rich experience with our cloud managed dashboard. And again, there are no controllers. In no scenario do you need a controller or a virtual machine. So that is all just delivered with one license and one piece of hardware. So with all of that being said, ultimately this does result in a lot of cost savings, whether that's on the CapEx or OpEx side. And we generally try to show some of this because I know that some of you from the IT side, you love some of the Meraki products, but sometimes it takes some convincing of management to kind of explain why you need some of these easy-to-use Meraki products. And you can show them a slide like this, right? They care about their bottom line. They care about not only upfront CapEx savings where you don't have to buy wireless controllers, but they also care about those OpEx savings over time. And we've got lots of studies on that at meraki.com/TCO. And from the perspective of Gartner, they say that 80 to 90% of IT costs occur after the initial purchase. So you can read up on studies like that and find that at meraki.com/TCO. This is another key benefit of cloud managed Wi-Fi. So this is not necessarily unique to Meraki, but if you're kind of trying to contrast on-prem versus cloud, one of the benefits is going to be that from the cloud perspective, your investment in the IT becomes more powerful over time, and that's because new features get added all the time via the dashboard. You might wake up one day and find that, hey, Meraki's updated the dashboard. I now have RF profiles, or I now have wireless health, which is a really powerful troubleshooting heuristics engine that we've added in, or we've got Umbrella DNS Security integration, for example, that recently was added in to the dashboard. So those products get more powerful over time. There's no additional license cost to that. You get all of these features for free delivered via the cloud without you really having to do anything. So speaking of wireless health, this is our powerful troubleshooting and heuristics engine that does automated and proactive troubleshooting on your network. So it's able to identify key issues within your network, which wireless access points are having issues, and then at what stages are they having issues. Is it at the authentication stage, the DHCP stage, which operating systems are failing, and it allows you to really prioritize where you focus your troubleshooting efforts. What we've seen is that wireless troubleshooting is by far the most costly piece of, basically the most costly portion when you consider the time perspective from an IT team. I've talked to our IT team here at Meraki, and probably the majority of their time from a troubleshooting perspective is spent troubleshooting the Wi-Fi. So this tool allows you to really simplify that process. I also talked about one of the newer features that we added, which is Umbrella integration. If you're not familiar with Umbrella, this is a Cisco security product. Previously it was called OpenDNS, and basically it gives you an additional layer of security on top of your wireless. And the beauty about Umbrella is that it is also delivered via the cloud. So Meraki Wireless is cloud managed, Umbrella is delivered via the cloud, so you can easily, with a few clicks, integrate the two solutions together and give you DNS security. You can then apply really granular policies on a per SSID basis using the Meraki group policies on the access points. And for those of you not familiar with kind of DNS security, when you think about malware, about 92% of malware uses DNS when it's reaching out to a command and control server somewhere. And so being able to have that first layer of defense on the DNS side really helps secure your network. And we've all got BYOD in our network, so we've got people bringing devices in that are reaching out to who knows what DNS locations. So having that umbrella security built in really helps reduce the risk of your wireless network. All right, so I am going to get into a product demo. I just want to show off how you might configure a Meraki access point, then monitor it, and then maybe troubleshoot it. So this is the Meraki dashboard, the point-and-click GUI-based that I've been mentioning. And I'm going to show you how I would take an access point that I've just received. Maybe it's your free trial or free access point that some of you may be getting. So what I would do is I would have my dashboard account, and I would go to Organization and then Create a Network. So once I'm there, let's say we call this Meraki Webinar Network. And then I can choose from a few different networks. So maybe it's just switches that I have. Maybe it's just a security appliance. Maybe it's combined. I've got multiple different pieces of Meraki hardware. In this case, we're just going to choose wireless, right? So have a wireless network. And then down below, you can see there's a list of different serial numbers and associated devices. If you haven't populated that yet, you would go to Add Devices, and you would just type in your serial number here. So for those of you getting a free Meraki access point, you would just type in your serial number. That'll be on the box when you get it, or it'll be in an email beforehand. And you would just type in your serial number, add the device, right? So here I've got a few existing ones that are already there. And for example, if I wanted to create a network with these 3 MR33 access points, I would just check mark those 3, click Create a Network, and we're off and running. So that's how easy it is to build a network. Now, there's all sorts of different things you can do. For example, you might want to do a bulk network creation. So there's all sorts of ways to automate this. You can copy settings from one network to another. So if you have some existing networks that, as I mentioned earlier, you've got 100 sites around the country and they all sort of look the same. Well, you might want to just copy the settings from one to the other and use those templates. So that's another way you can do it. There are other ways via APIs that you can really automate and streamline this process. If you want to Google Meraki U-Haul, they are scaling out, I think, 10 to 12,000 Meraki devices across lots of different U-Haul stores all around the country, and they're using an API to do a lot of that. So lots of different ways I could set up the network, but that's sort of the, for those of you getting the free AP, you would basically set it up this way. And then once you've set up the network, so now I'm going to go into an actual live demo dashboard video here. So I'm just going to jump into Meraki Corp, which is the office that I'm sitting in right now here in San Francisco. And what I see here is a view of all the different networks that I've configured. So we've got globally distributed offices. We're in Japan, London, Chicago, Sydney, San Francisco. Just recently opened an office in Shanghai, right? So I can see all of those different networks. I can see a couple areas where there may be some alerting or some devices that may be offline that I might want to troubleshoot. And we can see that because it's glowing yellow there. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to quickly dive into Meraki San Francisco. If I sort by the number of devices, we can see that that is the most popular network. So once I dive in there at a high level, right, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to dive all the way from high level, right? We just saw the global view. Now I see the network view. I'm going to dive all the way to a specific client. And again, as I mentioned, if you look at other cloud-managed, supposed cloud-managed solutions out there, many of them can't do this end-to-end all the way from, the global view all the way down to a specific client, out to applications, and get all of this visibility. But here I can see this network view. So over time, I see the traffic over the last 30 days, the last week. I can change kind of the timing of that. I can see all the applications within the network. So some of these might be productive, some might not be, but it just gives me a sense for what's happening in my network. And then I see all the clients here. I can choose to search by, all the iPhones, and all the iPhones pull up. I can even dive into, let's say, Netflix specifically, and I can see all the clients contributing to the rule, and then I can even dive specifically into that single client and start to fingerprint who that is, what they're doing, what applications they're using, where they are in the building, what access point they're connected to. I get all that information. So another thing I could do from a client perspective, if I want to block this client from the network for using too much Netflix, I can do that. I can apply a group policy and throttle his video. So lots of things I can do all the way down to a client level. So let me just show you how you would configure a group policy and some of the options available there. If I did want to create, a video throttling, maybe that's a group policy I'd want to create and then apply that to either my corporate network or my guest network. I would just go here and say throttle video, for example, and maybe it's something I want to schedule, right? So maybe it's something I want to do from 8 to 5 on weekdays only, because that's the, based on the traffic patterns I saw that that's when my network is most under stress. So I can choose to assign a custom bandwidth limit for this whole group policy, or I may want to kind of limit that and do that on a per application basis, because we do have this layer 7 visibility and capability to throttle that. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to add a traffic shaping rule, and I'm going to scroll down to video and music, and I want to throttle that down. So on a per client basis, we're only going to allow a megabit per second of video and music. I might also want to actually not just throttle some of the traffic that I don't want, but I might want to prioritize some of the traffic that I do want. So for example, VoIP and video conferencing. I'm going to go over there and I am going to apply a DSCP tag, highest priority, and I want to ignore any limits on VoIP and video conferencing. So pretty easy to kind of set up different group policies and rules within the network, and then I can choose to apply that to clients. I can choose to apply that to SSIDs and different things like that. So the way that I would configure an SSID here with Meraki, we generally recommend around 3 SSIDs just for the best wireless performance, but you can configure up to 15 SSIDs. Obviously, as you get to more and more SSIDs, it gives you more overhead on the network and starts to reduce some of your wireless performance. But if I were to configure an SSID, I could just go over here and edit the settings. So a lot of different options here as far as association. So do I want to do pre-shared key, WPA2 enterprise, and I can link that to a Radius server. So we've got some of that ICE integration. And then down here is where I would enter the Radius server IP, port, and secret. I could also just run a quick test on the Radius server if I wanted to. And then we've got a few different options as far as splash pages here. So I can just have it be click-through. I can authenticate via Meraki Systems Manager, which is our endpoint management product. We've got ICE authentication. We've got Meraki authentication. So this is just hosted in the Meraki cloud. Sponsored guest login. So we can do like an email or a Facebook page or something like that. So lots of different options there. So let's take a look at, for example, the splash page setup. So if I wanted to create a splash page, I think we have one configured here on the guest network, so I'm going to show that off. So we've just got a few theme options. We can create some custom themes as well and write a message and any specific logos and things that we want to add. So all of that's done here within the Meraki dashboard. Is there a specific URL you want the guest to go to once they've logged in? And then you can preview that page here. So here, this is the page that guests get when they come to the Meraki HQ. So there's a few different options that you have as far as setup and configuration from an SSID perspective. Some of the other things I'll show off as far as configuration, kind of setting up new devices, and then I'll open it up to questions again here. But I've got the ability to define my radio settings. So this is especially important, obviously, if we've got a really high-density network. We've got lots of different APs, and we want to optimize the network for performance. Certainly, we'd recommend doing a site survey beforehand to kind of determine what the needs are of your network. But once you're ready to kind of configure different things, we've got a few different options. So RF profiles, for example, we've got the ability to have some predefined RF profiles. So you've got basic indoor profile, basic outdoor profile. There's an auditorium profile. So a lot of different options here, but we've created some additional ones. And this allows you to define those RF settings based on the environment. So we've got a fifth floor that's got lots of interference because that's our engineering floor. So we've got lots of different testing going on there. We've got a second floor, which is our sales floor. So obviously lots of different calls happening that we don't want dropped. We've got the fourth floor, a lot of video conferencing happening there. So lots of different settings that you can adjust per profile. So here, for example, we've got minimum bitrate setting. We've got the radio transmit power range that we can choose to adjust. We do have some pretty high density on this floor, and so we've got the shorter transmit distance range. And then we've got channel settings. Again, this is a pretty high density environment here at HQ, so we've got a 20 megahertz channel setting. And we can kind of adjust all these different things, and we also have the ability to set RxSOP as well. So all of that can be defined per RF profile, and then you can pull that down and apply it to the right parts of your network. And then we have the ability to monitor all of that via the RF spectrum page. So here we can see all the different APs, and we can start to monitor, which ones are having some really high utilization, which ones might I want to tweak a little bit, adjust the channels on, and things like that. What I'm going to show off is how you would also monitor a lot of your access points. So to do that, I'm going to go here to the full access points list in the Meraki San Francisco network. And what you'll notice here is a few things. There are a few best practices that we do recommend as far as tagging. We certainly recommend to apply tags based on different VLANs, different needs that you might have in the network. For example, if you're an enterprise or corporate environment and you've got multiple different floors, we definitely recommend applying a tag to the different floors because it just makes it really easy when you're going in and wanting to troubleshoot or monitor or configure lots of different devices. So what I can do here is once I've defined these tags, I can click on the tags and select only the APs that have that tag applied. So for example, all of the APs that have the guest AP tag, I can click there. All of the APs that have the Meraki Corp SSID, we've assigned a tag with Meraki Corp. I can click that and select all of those. So pretty easy to kind of go through all of those with the tagging. We've also got the ability to sort all of the APs by the most number of clients at the moment. And then we can see the connectivity over time. So I'm looking over the last day, but I could also look over the last week or the last month to see if there's been any outages or any patterns with the outages. So for example here, we see there's some of the APs that are having some outages, but it doesn't seem to affect the first floor APs. So maybe there was a switch that went out, or there was some other, maybe it was a cable on a certain switch closet that happened, and we could start to troubleshoot that there. We also can pull in lots of different information as far as the mesh speed, latency, the clients that have a lot of usage, different alerts that are popping up. So this is kind of that global view of all of your different APs. Another thing we get as far as monitoring is the location heat map. And this allows us to monitor the clients that are moving around in your network over time. So this does it over every 24 hours, and you can choose a specific date. I'm going to just choose today and then hit play to see how clients are kind of moving around the network. One of the things that you'll notice here at Meraki San Francisco, we have a cafeteria on the north side of the building, and right around lunchtime that really picks up, and you've got clusters of clients that are moving up to that north side of the building. And this might help inform you to where you may want to place additional APs or do some additional troubleshooting. As you can see, the clients move around at different times of day to different parts of the network. One example I have of that is I'm going to dive into actually Motel 6. They're one of our customers, and they've got kind of an interesting deployment. So they've actually got over 10,000 Meraki access points deployed. So if I go to Motel 6 here, so I'm just going to go and view all of their networks. So this takes a little while to load because they have lots of different locations around, but there you can see kind of a global snapshot of all their different sites, all their locations. Most of them are usually running pretty well, but hey, every once in a while you've got issues and you want to figure out how to troubleshoot those. So for example, here down in Southern California, it looks like there's a site that is having some issues, and I can dive all the way down and figure out exactly what site that is, and all the way down to the exact AP that's having that issue. So then I can go directly into that AP, and here it says, all right, this AP has actually been unreachable for about an hour. So it's actually not even connected to the Meraki cloud at all. So it's hard to determine exactly what that is unless I was aware of what was happening exactly in their network. But it may be that they've got a technician that's moving around. Maybe he's replacing some cables. Maybe he's repositioning the AP or something like that. But I can go all the way from that global scope down to that specific AP. And they've also obviously have this location heat map feature that's running at this hotel location. So you can see what they've done is they've placed the APs, pretty evenly across the building, but they've certainly got a few areas right in this area where they've got a lot of clustering happening. So you can see that may be like a breakfast area location or a lobby or something like that. And you can see that they've placed the APs in such a way that they're placed right around those clusters. So that's just a feature that allows you to help figure out some of the placement of your APs along with a site survey that you might do as well. But you can continue to monitor that over time. All right, so there were a few questions around wireless health. I'm going to dive into that and show that off as far as what you get from a troubleshooting perspective. So really, again, the idea here is that wireless is always going to have certain issues, right? We've got lots of self-healing and auto RF and channel changes that are happening with Meraki devices, but even there, you're going to have some challenges. There's lots of interference. You've got DFS events. There's just lots of things that can throw wireless off. The idea is just that when anything gets thrown off, you know what to prioritize and what to take a look at and where to start as far as your troubleshooting. And so what wireless health shows off is kind of a holistic view of the number of failed connections, the average wireless latency, and it shows that by AP, so you can figure out which APs are really having the most issues, or you can do it from a client perspective. So which types of clients? Is it iPhones that are having the most issues? Is there any pattern you can spot as far as different operating systems? And then we can also see all of the connections. So where are the failures happening? And it looks like here in the Meraki network, we're not failing too much as far as DNS or DHCP, but it does look like we're having lots of authentication failures. So I can then choose to click into that, and I can see, for example, there's a bunch of different clients here that are having 802.1x authentication failure. This is probably related to passwords that are out of date, and they're getting kicked off the wireless network. So it may make sense, if I'm an IT person at Meraki, it may make sense for me to rethink about how we are updating people's passwords. And that might help give them a better wireless experience. But there might be all sorts of different issues as far as DHCP or DNS, and I can start to pinpoint, once I dive into those issues, are those issues that are happening to certain APs. And here it looks like it's kind of, it's fifth floor APs, third floor, fourth floor, a couple different APs that are having issues. But it allows me to just quickly dive into those. So we've got that from a connection perspective. Then we've also got some latency. So am I having issues on voice traffic or video traffic, background traffic? And it gives me a snapshot of that. So here in the Meraki office, it does seem like video traffic is probably the most affected. And then it tells me which is the highest AP to client latency. Certainly this third floor AP is giving us lots of issues. I can immediately dive into that third floor AP and see kind of what some of the problems are. So it does highlight here from a DNS perspective and DHCP perspective where some of the bad requests are coming from. So that's kind of a quick snapshot of wireless health. We've got different pieces of documentation and things that help to explain wireless health, how best to use it. There are also some things like configuration alerts that I can set up within wireless health. So if, for example, I do have DNS or DHCP-based failures on specific SSIDs that I really care about, I can set up those alerts and have them email me as well. All right, so that's a quick view of wireless health. Another thing I'll show off here is the Air Marshal feature. Every Meraki AP has a quad radio architecture, and that is an IoT radio that's built in. It's got Bluetooth. There's also a security scanning radio that's built in as one of those 4 radios, and this helps detect wireless intrusion attempts and helps detect spoof SSIDs and malicious broadcasts. So it's got that extra radio to be able to scan for those issues, any malicious broadcasts, even packet floods. Luckily, we haven't been seeing that. But that's just an additional layer of security that you get. Particularly if you're in a corporate environment, you've got lots of assets and things that you don't want messed with. Even if you're in a retail environment, you really don't want, people setting up some sort of pineapple or some sort of way to get guests to give the wrong information. So in addition to some of the Air Marshal and wireless intrusion prevention detection, that same radio also helps build this RF spectrum detection. So it's detecting the RF spectrum, and then it's helping the different access points adjust their RF channel based on some of the interference and the different RF events that it's detecting. So to show that off as an example, I'm going to dive into a single AP here. And when I look at this AP, I kind of get all of this holistic data of live traffic. I've got all the clients. I've got the firmware version. But I can go into RF specifically, and then I can see the different RF events that are happening. And so, for example, here we see there is an auto RF channel change. So that's automatically the AP detected, hey, we need to change from channel 157 to channel 36 for better performance. And it's kind of scanning around at all times and making sure that the different APs are optimized for the best performance. I can also use this for a lot of troubleshooting. So, if I want to see how many clients have been connected over the last month, try to determine if the channel utilization is too high, things like that. And then I have some tools built in to do some of the troubleshooting too. So if I want to ping the AP, I can kind of run a live ping there. I can run an ARP table. I can also do things like blink LEDs. So right now, one of these APs on the third floor has an LED that's blinking that might alert a technician or someone on site of which AP to reinstall a cable on or do something else and replace that AP. We can also do things like run a trace route and test the throughput to the dashboard. All right, so I'm gonna wrap up here on the demo, but I do want to get through some of the different products that Meraki does have available. So one of the challenges that a lot of our customers are facing is that wireless continues to change. We've got lots of generational changes that are happening, really high density environments where here in the office in San Francisco, we've got people with Apple Watches, they've got laptops, they've got phones. It's really a wireless first office, and so Wi-Fi environments are getting really dense. And then experiences are getting enhanced as well. You've got wayfinding applications, VR, AR, really high definition video that are all kind of placing strain on wireless networks. And then in addition, we've got the Internet of Things is kind of expanding, and that's causing disruption to wireless networks. So with a lot of these changes, Meraki has launched a couple of new Wi-Fi 6 compatible access points. This is synonymous with 802.11ax, if you're more familiar with that naming. So with these two APs, this is the MR55 and MR45. We've got huge capabilities to handle those changing wireless environments. So the MR55, for example, has got 8x8, 8 transmit and receive antennas, 8 spatial streams. It's got new features within Wi-Fi 6 like OFDMA and MU-MIMO that combines with OFDMA to really handle those high density environments. If you're not familiar with some of the new capabilities of Wi-Fi 6, you can Google, for example, Meraki Wi-Fi 6 white paper. We have a white paper that breaks down the different features and how they benefit you within these Wi-Fi networks of the future. This MR55 has also got 5 gigs of multi-gig backhaul to really handle a lot of that traffic. And we've seen upwards of 200 plus clients that are logged into a single MR55 AP without any capacity issues whatsoever. So these are some of the new APs that we've launched, but in addition, we've also got a whole suite of indoor models, outdoor models with external antennas, as well as outdoor ruggedized IP67 models. And you can learn more about all of these different products on meraki.com/wireless. What you will notice is that, compared to some other upstart wireless companies, they may be quite a bit more limited as far as the different models that they do offer. We do have an AP for every occasion, and we've got all these different external antenna capabilities as well. So with a lot of those external antennas, Meraki does have a unique ability to detect the different antennas and automatically set them up. So that's another capability that you can learn more about and maybe talk to one of your Meraki sales engineers or one of the salespeople about that. They'll be happy to talk to you more about the antenna capabilities. And then, we didn't get the chance within this webinar to go into some of the other products too much. We talked a little bit about the security and SD-WAN appliances, but we didn't really go into switches or cameras or endpoint management. We do have separate webinars on that. That's why we don't touch too much on that within the wireless webinar. But all of the products work really seamlessly together, and that's really the goal with Meraki, is that we're not just a wireless company. We're a company that that sells all sorts of different devices, and they're all managed within the same cloud dashboard. So I touched a little bit on licenses, but just to clarify a little bit more, is that every piece of Meraki hardware does require a software license to operate, and those licenses come in 1, 3, 5, 7, and 10-year durations that are bought up front, and it gives you all of the capabilities that I showed you here today. It also comes with the over-the-web firmware and security updates that happen automatically that make your hardware more powerful over time. It's got 24/7 enterprise support and warranty. So the lifetime warranty for Meraki Wireless is on all the APs except for the outdoor ones, but any internal or indoor AP will have a lifetime warranty. So a lot of that being said, definitely appreciate every one of you for joining the webinar here. Thanks a lot for attending.